to the latest episode of the Kansas Moonshot Podcast, where we are shining the spotlight on amazing things happening in schools across the state. Whether you're launching some amazing redesign plans or a teacher trying to do something a little different, I want to share your story. The goal is to celebrate the awesomeness all around us. In this episode, I interviewed Tammy Mitchell from the Kansas Department of Education. She shared about the steps that were taken to develop the guidance for the fall and who was involved in the process. For this episode, I want to make it clear from the beginning that this isn't an outline of the guidance for the fall. It's not all of the details from it. The goal of this episode is to share how that document was created and especially how various stakeholders were included in its development. The full document will be released next week. Until then, check out this great interview. All right, well, thank you for being on the show. I have an amazing guest today, sharing a little bit about the steps that led up to the plan that's going to be coming out for the fall and about who was involved in the process and how the process took place to develop these plans. First of all, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, thanks, Josh. My name is Tammy Mitchell, and normally I am the Elementary Redesign Specialist for the State Department of Education, but I think ever since March, we've all just been jumping in with other duties as assigned, and so I've had a really unique opportunity to work through all three of the stages that are taking place to develop the Navigating Change 2020 guidance.
Can you share, so you said there are three stages. Can you explain what were the stages and what was the purpose of each stage?
Sure. So probably late April, our commissioner and deputy commissioner brought together this idea that continuous learning that took place in the spring and that guidance had served its purpose and was really good. But one of the things that our agency did was they surveyed all of the districts and asked, how did it go? How did continuous learning go? What were the gaps? What were the challenges? And based off of that data, our agency knew that if things were going to be uncertain for the 2021 school year, districts were going to need a different kind of guidance. And so initially, stage one was led by Education Service Center people and KSDE staff. And we pulled in teachers and content experts to take our Kansas standards and create competencies. Now that was a really hard task because first we had to all agree on what we considered a competency. And so we relied heavily on research and information from the Aurora Institute and from AIR. So we pulled that together, and the basic definition for us is that standards are the discrete things that teachers teach, and competencies are broader statements of what students are able to show they can do. And so the thinking behind flipping to competency-based learning or competency-based education was that if we needed to go into different learning environments for next year, there needed to be a way to harness all of the standards and work really more cross-curricularly, because we know that in a remote or in a hybrid environment, it's not feasible or even healthy for students to sit at a computer for 6.25 hours of the day. Also, it's really hard for families to manage multiple students. So that was the thinking behind that. And we had approximately 80 different stakeholders from across the state and KSDE content experts that where their job is also the standards, and Education Service Center professionals pulling down the standards and creating competencies that are grade banded. Now that's different too, because there aren't kindergarten competencies and there aren't fourth grade competencies. They're grade banded so that the competencies are a statement for pre-K through grade 2, grades 3 through 5, grades 6 through 8, and grades 9 through 12. The benefit of that is that when I was a teacher in the classroom, in an elementary classroom, you never had fourth graders that were all on fourth grade level, right? So you were always scrambling to figure out, okay, what do the ones that aren't quite there yet need? What are the ones that need more challenge need? And these competencies create kind of a framework for making that task a little bit, I wouldn't say easier, but a little more logical. I think teachers would all agree that if you're an elementary teacher, there is really no way that you can know all of the ELA standards, the math standards, science, social studies, and then also there are music standards and PE standards and theater standards and social emotional learning standards. We've got a lot of standards, right? So how do we package those in ways that make sense and are a little more able for families and teachers to navigate? So that was the work of stage 1. Do you have any questions or comments about stage 1? Because it was a lot, and it all took place in the month of May.
No, that sounds great. And I know we're going to get to it when we get to stage 3. I'm a part of the stage 3 team looking at the 6-8 band. And I can say, looking at the competencies, it definitely makes it easier because, like you said, it's got the different tiers of instruction, the different levels. And so looking at it, it's very easy for me to know, oh, this is what my kids should be able to do at each level. And I think that it's going to be great for differentiation. So, I like the work that's been done. So that was phase 1. Stage 1 was developing what these competencies would be. So moving into stage 2, what was stage 2 like?
Well, the ending cap I want to say about stage 1, and I'm going to say it all along, is that the competencies do not replace the standards. Mm-hmm. The competencies are just ways to group the standards. So that's important. Okay. So then in stage 2, so the artifacts from stage 1 were the grade banded competencies, and then what we are calling assessment rubrics. And anytime you say the word assessment, everyone's like freaking out. And we're not talking about a high stakes assessment. We're talking, how do you know that students are learning what you want them to learn? And so there are rubrics that go along with those grade banded competencies so that it's pretty easy for a teacher to look at the rubric and look at where students are and figure out, how well did they really embrace that competency, or how much more do they still need to do? So those were the artifacts from stage 1. Well, then the stage 2 work was, okay, so you've got competencies and assessment rubrics. How does that work? And so the commissioner and deputy commissioner relied on all of the teachers that had input on the continuous learning plan and asked them, help us find other educators to engage in this stage 2 work. And so that group ended up being a lot bigger. And so I wanted to kind of share too that there are 2 parts to the stage 2 work that are parallel, and they come together in this document. So what I'm talking about right now is the instructional side. So that is taking the competencies and the assessment rubrics and creating learning frameworks that put those together in ways that teachers can see how to create a unit of study that's rigorous, that can take place whether you're on site with all your kids, like business as usual, or whether you've got some kind of hybrid thing going on where you've got small groups and some kids are home and some kids are at school, which always makes people feel really anxious just to imagine that, but it'll be fine. Or whether you're in a complete remote learning environment where you can't really bring kids in, much like what we experienced in the spring. So So that work, over 100 educators assigned to grade bands took those materials and created these learning frameworks. And I'm telling you what, Josh, that's when I really started to get excited, because I was part of the pre-K2 grade band work all the way through, and Rachel Meenan was the lead of the pre-K2 group, and those teachers just knocked it out of the park at every grade band. But they took those competencies, they put them into frameworks. They're cross-curricular. There are guides for high-level instruction. There's a list of who you might want to collaborate with. The social, emotional, and character development skills that can be enhanced in that particular framework are laid out there for teachers. So that's really exciting. I think each grade band has over 20 different examples of how teachers might pull that together for a really rich and robust unit in multiple learning environments. Now, I will say that it's not curriculum, and it's not something that teachers are like, okay, I've taught these 20 frameworks, so I'm done. Those 20 frameworks can be used as is. They can be modified by teachers, and they're also a phenomenal example of what teachers might want to create their own. One of the things that this group, they were so excited. They wanted to do everything for their colleagues, like right down to the lesson plan level. And they were so pumped, but we had to say, now, wait a minute. How excited are you when someone hands you a scripted curriculum? And they're like, you could see their eyes huge on Zoom. They're like, nobody wants a scripted curriculum. I said, then let's not make one. Okay. Teachers need to still have choice and voice and autonomy in this, but there's a lot of structure as well.
Yeah.
Now that was one side. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I really like that because, like you said, it has that flexibility of, I like this. This is going to be my guiding document as I create my own version, or I'm not sure where to start. I'm going to start with this one, and then I may develop my own after I go through this one and see, kind of play around with this one and how this one works. So I like that flexibility of that.
Yeah, we just have to be clear that, one, it's not a complete curriculum, mm-hmm. and two, it's not a mandate. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
So that was one half of the stage 2 work. The other half was a group that was spearheaded by multiple agencies and experts coming together to create the operational guidance. And that is, how do we open school buildings as safely as possible? And so that group was made up of Kansas superintendents and administrators, experts from the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, the Department of Children and Families. We had pediatricians, other medical professionals that came together, and they've researched all of the stuff that is out there. And I mean, I've been watching Facebook, and everybody's got an idea, and everyone's like, well, did you see this guidance? Did you see? And it becomes so confusing and so convoluted. So this group pulled all of that together and really tried to think about what's really, really necessary as guidance. We still have 3 or 4 counties in our state that have not had a single COVID case. And then we've got others that are spiking like crazy. So it can't be a one-size-fits-all thing. But they worked on that part of the guidance, right down to, who wears masks in schools, who doesn't wear masks in schools, and why is that? Social distancing, lunchroom, athletics. There's a lot in there too to consider, but that work was happening side by side, so that this document that's going to be public next week brings both of those pieces together.
All right, so we've got stage 1, and then stage 2. You had the 2 groups, one working on operations, one working on instruction, and then we're overlapping with stage 3. I know stage 3 kind of started in the middle of stage 2 finishing up their work, and that's where we're at right now. Can you describe what is stage 3's work?
Yeah, so I don't know. Sometime, the time frame gets kind of blurry to me, but sometime in the middle of stage 2, Dr. Watson got on a Facebook Live with a Kansas teachers group, and I don't really think he realized that there are like 15,000 teachers in that group, and he invited anyone and everyone to jump into the process and to email Brad Nuenswander with their interest. And within like 2 hours, my boss, who's Dr. Nuenswander, had over 700 emails, and he's like, I can't reply to these people one at a time. And so we were thinking, what a phenomenal opportunity. We've got so many Kansas educators that really want to pitch in and help. And so what would be the next thing that we would need? And so we came up with the idea that, we want to give these 700 teachers an opportunity to have a first glance at everything before it's actually published, to get their feedback on what kind of professional development are we going to need to be able to have teachers feel confident in using this guidance. And it's kind of twofold. The guidance is one, a response to a crisis, right? And so in that way, it's that navigating change. But it's also the competency-based learning piece of it, we believe is high quality. And we've got 4 renditions of Redesign schools that have been asking for this very thing. They're trying to move into personalized learning, but they realize that in order to do that, they need that framework of competencies. And so we have several districts, I think, in our state that will implement that competency-based learning guidance and adopt it as part of their redesign plan. So it's kind of a twofold thing. And so this is where I'm just going to be kind of honest in how I feel about sometimes, and I'm saying me, sometimes I assume that I know what kind of professional development teachers need. And I think that sometimes agencies do that, and service centers do that, and curriculum leaders. We just assume that we know what teachers are going to need without really asking the teachers. And sometimes we're right, and sometimes we are way off the mark. And so this is an opportunity for us to engage hundreds of voices in what are teachers going to need, and then how do we create an aligned plan with KSDE, with TASN, with all of the education service centers, so that we're all working off of the same blueprint and providing what stakeholders need. And so I'm really excited about that, because those surveys are starting to come in. We've got hundreds of them. I asked teachers to review 1 grade band to begin with, and several, dozens have said, hey, I'm done with the 3-6 grade band. Can I look at the pre-K2 and provide feedback on that? So I've had a lot of really interesting conversations and emails, and I haven't really taken a deep dive into the data just yet, because the due date for that isn't until next week. In addition to the 500 teachers, we also sent it out to every redesign school and said, do you have any teachers in your buildings that would want to provide feedback? And then the redesign schools in the survey have a couple of additional questions to ask about alignment to their redesign plan. We have education service centers and KSDE who are ready to provide that initial training on, how do you go through the documents? What are your first steps? And we've got that in place. We're working with McCrell to develop a 1-year plan, and they are waiting on us to provide them the data from stage 3. And then fingers crossed, we wrote for an Education Stabilization Fund federal grant to build out a 3-year plan. So that data is super important. And if anyone's listening here and they were part of that stage, and you're still working through these materials that are just in Google folders. They're not in any pretty format. Just thank you so much for being willing to give your summer time to help your colleagues around the state.
And that's what I've loved about this whole process is every step of the way you can see educators' input into the different stages, input into what we need. I appreciate being asked multiple times, okay, well, what do you need? What do you need? What do you need? I think that's appreciated by teachers because, hearing in other states, it's not always the case that teachers' voices haven't had a seat at the table as much as we have. So that's greatly appreciated from the teacher end of things.
Well, yeah, and I do kind of look at the Kansas Educator Facebook from time to time, and I know that there have been, especially in the last week, this angst of where's Kansas's guidance? Iowa's had theirs out since May, and there are probably a dozen states that were really quick to issue reopening guidance. I can't really guarantee, but I would highly suspect that they didn't ask their teachers for input. It was just a group of people at their State Department who made all of those decisions and got something out quick that may or may not even work. I'm really proud of what Kansas has done to engage those who are closest to the students to say, other than the parents, but in our education system, those who are closest to the students, what do you need? What do you want? How do we make this work?
All right, now looking forward, what is the timeline as far as when will the guidance be released to the public? I know it's going to be a massive, massive document that'll take some time to sift through, but when will this information be released to the public?
Sure. It is being presented to the State Board of Education next week. I don't remember if it's on the agenda for Tuesday or Wednesday, but once the State Board approves it, and they may recommend some changes, they always have the right to do that. But as soon as the State Board approves it and it's ready, and I think that they're planning to have it ready to go live on the website as soon as that approval happens, if it happens, hopefully it happens, then it'll be ready. Now, one thing that I'm going to say right now, and I don't know when you're airing this, but I do not want people to freak out because it's over 1,000 pages long. And it's so funny because Dr. Gibson, who led the oversight committee for this stage 2 work, he actually had printed it out and he showed us on Zoom. And I don't know if you know what 1,000 pages looks like, but honestly, maybe it was the camera, there could be an angle thing going on there, but it was massive. But what is going to be, so don't print it. Don't print all, just don't. Your school secretary will hate you, but it's really organized well. So, it's color coded so that all of the pre-K2 stuff is a color. It's color coded by grade band. The operations stuff is all together. So there wouldn't be any reason for anyone to read all of it or need all of it. But it will be easy to parcel out and easy to see, I'm a 4th grade teacher. I need the grade 3 to 5 band materials, and it's all right here. So.
Excellent.
But can you imagine, but think about that. Kansas teachers and stakeholders and cross-agency people. I think by the time we had it, everyone counted, over 1,000 people have had input into this process. And in 3 months' time, as a team, everyone created this amazing guidance. And I think other states are going to be jealous. Not that that's the intent or the goal, but Kansas is definitely leading the nation in what we're able and willing to do for students and families.
And again, over half of those were teachers. So that just says a lot about what the state values.
Probably 80% of those people were teachers.
If people want to, when that gets released out, where will they be able to find that information?
I am sure it will be prominently located on the KSDE website. I'm also certain that it will be tweeted. It will be linked to the KSDE Facebook page. As soon as we see it, Redesign will retweet it. I'm sure that there will be a major media blast on how to get a hold of that.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much for being a part of this, being on this interview. I know a lot of people there's a little bit of anxiety about what to expect in the fall. And so knowing that there is this extensive plan, some guidance for districts to consider as they're rolling out their plans, is helpful to know that there is something in the works. It's coming. It's robust, and it's got a lot of guidance in that. So thank you so much for being on this.
Yeah, and let me reiterate, it's guidance.
Yes.
It's not state law. It's not state statute. Local districts need to be working with their local health departments to figure out when and how to open schools and to who, and how to make it as safe as possible. So.
All right. Well, thank you very much for being on the podcast.
All right. Thanks so much, Josh. Have a great day.
All right. You too.
For more information about this episode, check out my website, MrStockRocks.com. If you know someone doing something amazing in their classroom, let me know about it. I'd love to have them on the show. You can email me at teachlikeaninja@gmail.com or follow me on Twitter at teachlikeaninja. I've been your host, Josh Stock, 6th grade English teacher and author of the new book, Awesome Sauce, Create Videos to Inspire Students, Engage Parents, and Save You Time. Until next time, book it forward and be awesome.